Welcome to IT Leadership Hub, where we build better leaders in technology. Cybersecurity is no longer just a technical issue. It is a leadership issue. The real question is not whether your organization will face a security incident. The real question is whether your leadership team will be ready when it happens. As organizations adopt new tools, expand remote work, and rely more heavily on vendors, the risk continues to grow. But the greatest weakness is often not outdated software or weak passwords. It is unprepared leadership. Too many organizations still treat cybersecurity like a problem for the information technology department alone. That mindset is dangerous. Security incidents do not stay confined to one department. They affect operations, customer trust, legal exposure, public reputation, and executive decision-making. This is why cybersecurity leadership matters. Strong leadership in cybersecurity means building a culture where security becomes everyone's responsibility. It means preparing executives to make good decisions under pressure. It means understanding that vendor and supply chain risk can be just as dangerous as threats inside your own network. If you are a Chief Information Officer, Information Technology Director, Manager, or Executive Leader, cybersecurity readiness starts with you. Let's begin with the first major truth. Security culture matters more than security tools. Technology is important. Firewalls, endpoint protection, monitoring systems, and identity controls all have value. But even the most advanced security stack will fail if your people are careless, rushed, confused, or afraid to speak up. A weak culture can defeat strong technology. When employees click suspicious links, approve sign-in requests they do not recognize, delay reporting unusual behavior, or assume someone else will handle the problem, your organization becomes vulnerable. In many cases, the biggest risk is not a lack of tools. It is a lack of leadership. Leaders shape culture through the behaviors they model. If executives treat security like an inconvenience, employees will do the same. If leaders ignore basic protections, request exceptions, or act like policy only applies to everyone else, the message spreads quickly. But when leaders take security seriously, the rest of the organization notices. Cybersecurity culture begins with visible leadership. That means rewarding people who report problems instead of punishing them for raising concerns. It means creating psychological safety so employees feel comfortable speaking up when something looks wrong. In a healthy culture, reporting a suspicious email is seen as responsible, not disruptive. It also means practicing blameless reviews after incidents. When something goes wrong, the goal should not be to shame an individual. The goal should be to learn what failed in the system, what assumptions broke down, and how the organization can improve. Fear drives silence. Trust drives learning. Another essential leadership behavior is enforcing security consistently. Multi-factor authentication cannot be optional for senior leaders. Policies cannot apply only to lower levels of the organization. The moment executives ask for exceptions because they are too busy, they tell everyone else that security is negotiable. Leaders must also protect time for security fundamentals. Patching systems, reviewing access, testing controls, and updating processes are often pushed aside by more urgent business demands. But leaders who constantly sacrifice security, work for short-term convenience, create long-term risk. What seems like a minor delay today can become tomorrow's major incident. And security must become part of performance conversations. When people know that responsible behavior, attention to risk, and sound judgment matter for recognition and advancement, they begin to see security as part of their job. Not extra work, not someone else's task, part of their role. This is what real cybersecurity leadership looks like. It is not just buying tools, it is building habits. And those habits can stop real attacks before they become disasters. Imagine a night shift employee noticing unusual file activity in the middle of the night. In one organization, that employee ignores it, assumes the information technology team will handle it in the morning, and goes back to work. By sunrise, ransomware has spread across the environment. In another organization, The employee reports it immediately because leadership made it clear that speaking up matters. The security team responds quickly, isolates the affected systems, and prevents a much larger crisis. The technology may be similar in both environments. The leadership is not. That brings us to the second major pillar of cybersecurity leadership: executive tabletop exercises. Most technical teams have some understanding of incident response, but many leadership teams do not realize how unprepared they are until they are in the middle of a crisis. A breach is a terrible time to discover confusion. When systems go down, data may be exposed, regulators may need to be notified, customers may demand answers, and the media may come calling. At that moment, leaders are expected to make fast, high-stakes decisions. Who has authority to shut down production systems? Who communicates with customers? Who speaks to legal counsel? Who updates the board? Who approves external statements? Who coordinates with law enforcement? If those answers are unclear during a real incident, the damage grows. That is why executive tabletop exercises matter. A tabletop exercise is a simulated crisis designed to test leadership readiness. It is not a technical drill focused only on engineers. It is a decision-making exercise for executives and organizational leaders. The goal is not perfection. The goal is exposure. You want to expose gaps in decision authority, communication chains, legal readiness, customer response, and business continuity before a real attacker does it for you. A strong tabletop exercise should include the right people. That often means executive leadership, the information technology director, the security lead, legal counsel, communications or public relations, human resources when needed, and key business leaders. The point is to bring together the people who would actually shape the response in a crisis. The exercise should feel real. Present a scenario. Maybe ransomware is discovered early Monday morning. Maybe your cloud provider reports suspicious activity affecting customer environments. Maybe a journalist reaches out saying leaked customer data is about to be published. Maybe employees report a flood of unauthorized sign-in requests and executives' accounts have already been compromised. Then, force decisions. What happens in the first 30 minutes? Do you isolate systems? Do you notify customers? Do you engage law enforcement? Do you go public now or wait for more information? Do you shut down operations to protect the environment or keep systems live and risk more damage? These are leadership decisions, and leaders must practice making them. One of the biggest benefits of tabletop exercises is that they reveal hidden weaknesses that written plans often miss. Maybe no one knows who has final authority in a crisis. Maybe the communications team has never worked through a breach scenario. Maybe the person who must approve a shutdown is often unavailable. Maybe executives do not understand reporting timelines or insurance requirements. These are dangerous blind spots, but they are manageable if discovered early. Quarterly or semi-annual tabletop exercises help leadership teams build familiarity, confidence, and coordination. They transform cybersecurity from an abstract topic into something practical and immediate. They also send a message across the organization. Leadership is taking this seriously. Now, let's look at the third major issue: vendor and supply chain risk. Many leaders focus heavily on internal defenses while overlooking the risk introduced by outside partners. But your organization is only as secure as the vendors, providers, and platforms connected to your business. A third-party breach can quickly become your problem. If a human resources platform is compromised, your employee data may be exposed. If a cloud provider experiences an incident, your operations may be disrupted. If a vendor has too much access to your systems, their weakness becomes your vulnerability. Cybersecurity leadership means treating vendors as risk surfaces, not just service providers. Too often, organizations choose vendors based mostly on price, features, or convenience. Security becomes a checkbox in procurement rather than a leadership priority. That is a costly mistake. Leaders need a practical way to assess vendor risk. Start by recognizing that not all vendors carry the same level of threat. A provider with access to sensitive customer data, production systems, or critical operations deserves much more scrutiny than a low-risk vendor with limited access. Leaders should classify vendors based on data access, connectivity, and business impact. Next, apply least privilege. Vendors should only have access to the systems and information required for their role. No extra permissions. No broad just-in-case access. Every unnecessary connection is an unnecessary risk. Security expectations must also be built into contracts. If you wait until after an incident to discover that notification timelines are vague or audit rights are missing, you waited too long. Contracts should clearly define standards, response requirements, and accountability. Security should be addressed before signatures, not after problems appear. Leaders must also ensure ongoing visibility. Vendor relationships cannot be reviewed once and forgotten. Access should be monitored. Privileged accounts should be validated. Former vendors should be off-boarded quickly and completely. Old credentials and lingering accounts are easy targets for attackers. And verification matters. Do not simply trust vendor claims. Review evidence. Ask for current reports. Confirm the scope of certifications. Make sure the controls they describe actually apply to the services you use. Trust without verification is not leadership. It is wishful thinking. Now, let's make this practical. What should leaders do right now? First, strengthen security culture. Talk with department leaders about how security shows up in daily work. Review recent incidents and identify cultural causes, not just technical ones. Recognize employees who raised concerns or reported suspicious behavior. Make security part of team discussions and organizational messaging. Second, schedule an executive tabletop exercise. Do not delay it. Do not push it down the list. Block the time now. Assign ownership. Build a realistic scenario. Run the exercise. Then document what you learn and act on it quickly. Third, review vendor and supply chain exposure. Audit vendor access. Remove permissions that are no longer needed. Identify your highest risk vendors. Request updated security reports. Review contracts for notification timelines and accountability. Confirm that privileged vendor access is monitored. These steps are not complicated, but they do require leadership. That is the point. Cybersecurity leadership is not about pretending you can eliminate all risk. You cannot. Every organization faces threats. Every organization is vulnerable to mistakes, disruptions, and attacks. The difference is how leadership prepares. Some organizations wait for a crisis and then react with confusion, delay, and blame. Others build a culture of awareness, practice decision-making before pressure arrives, and take third-party risks seriously. Those organizations are not immune to incidents, but they are far more resilient when incidents happen. And resilience is the real goal. If you lead in technology, this responsibility belongs to you. Not just to your security team, not just to your engineers, not just to the information technology department, to you. Because when a breach occurs, leadership will determine whether the organization responds with clarity or chaos. Leadership will shape whether employees speak up or stay silent. Leadership will decide whether vendors are managed wisely or trusted blindly. Leadership will influence whether a difficult event becomes a contained incident or a devastating crisis. That is why cybersecurity must be seen as a leadership issue first. So here is the challenge. Take action this week. Start a conversation about security culture. Schedule a tabletop exercise. Review your vendor access and contracts. Model the behaviors you expect from everyone else. Because the next incident may come sooner than you think. And when it does, the question will not be whether your tools were impressive. The question will be whether your leadership was ready. If you want to build stronger teams, smarter leaders, and more resilient organizations in the information technology field, subscribe to IT Leadership Hub and keep learning with us.